so Wolfclick posted this tweet the other day. The Pokemon community is divided about a lot of things, but at least we can all agree Gen 7 is the worst of the gens. A lot of people are in like an uproar about this. I don't really know why. Like, it's not wrong. I mean, maybe you disagree, and that's fine. You can absolutely disagree. I would argue, maybe Gen 6 is the worst. In my opinion, Gen 7 is worse than Gen 6, but that's because I like Mega Evolution more than I like Z-Moves. I think Z-Moves is like the worst gimmick. It's kind of just boring. It's just 16 or whatever new moves. It's a handful and a couple dozen or so new moves, and that's really it. I think that's just the least interesting of the gimmicks. I think the Mega Evolution is the most interesting with the new forms. That's really cool. Yes, they're overpowered and it has its flaws, but overall I think that's the better of the gimmicks from the last 3 generations. But honestly, in a grander scope, calling Gen 7 the worst generation of Pokemon, it kind of doesn't mean a lot. Like, sure, it's the worst generation, but like, every Pokemon generation is great. There is no bad Pokemon generation. A lot of people were saying, oh, well, no, how can Gen 1 and Gen 2, they're the worst because they're Game Boy games. But when you're comparing, when you're debating on how good a game is, context of when it came out really matters, because sure, Gen 1 looks terrible today, but it was good for a Game Boy game. Gen 2 was absolutely amazing for a Game Boy game. It looks so much better. The drastic quality change from Gen 1 to Gen 2, it's astonishing what they did, considering it's basically on the same system. In fact, Gold and Silver are literally Game Boy games. You can play them on a regular Game Boy. You don't need a Game Boy Color. The only one that required the Game Boy Color was Crystal. It's enhanced with the Game Boy Color, but it requires the Game Boy Color for Crystal. The original 2, Gold and Silver, did not require the Game Boy. They're Game Boy Color. They're Game Boy games. So what they did with that system for those first 2 generations is absolutely amazing, and you can't discount that the original Pokemon games started the series. That's what started the franchise. So its quality is always at least a little bit above the worst. It's never going to be the worst because it started everything. And Gen 3 is great. I can't imagine thinking Gen 3 is the worst. I have 0 complaints for Gen 3. Gen 4 is probably the best. While Diamond and Pearl are not great games, I think they're decent games. They're not great games. Platinum is just astounding. Platinum is damn near a perfect Pokemon game. And then Heart Gold and Soul Silver are, by many standards, the best Pokemon games ever made. I think that kind of has shifted now that Arceus is out, because I think Legends Arceus might be like the best Pokemon game ever made. But as far as traditional Pokemon games go, that's by far the best one. Gen 5, a lot of people hate on Gen 5, but Gen 5 was a reboot to the series, and for what it is done wonderfully. It's hard to look at Gen 5 and be like, that's the worst one. It rebooted the series. Its gimmick was that it had more Pokemon than any other region, and I actually don't think they're that bad. There's a couple that aren't great, but for the most part, the region's Pokemon are really good, and the region itself is good. It had sequels. It's a really good generation. I can't imagine putting it as the worst. Gen 6 and 7 is where I think Pokemon was kind of on a bumpy road. Gen 6, X and Y could have really used that Z version to fix them the way Diamond and Pearl really needed Platinum to save that generation. And Auras are great. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are great games. I think they're great. But they kind of needed that third version for Gen 6 to really tie everything together, and we didn't get that. So I feel like that kind of knocks it down a peg below most other regions. It's, in my opinion, the second worst region. And then Gen 7 kind of has the same problem where Sun and Moon are just so handholdy. There's so many just gameplay problems that I have trouble calling it the best one. It's so not good. Like, from a gameplay perspective, and most Pokemon games I would say are absolutely perfect on a gameplay perspective if you like the gameplay loop. If you like the Pokemon loop, none of them really fuck with it. None of them mess it up. Sun and Moon kind of mess with it a little bit in a way where they guide you everywhere. There's no real freedom. It's very linear. It's just not great. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon fix a lot of these problems, but they're not sequels like in the way that Black 2 and White 2 are. And for me, personally, the fact that it's 2 games, again, so Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and they're really not that different from Sun and Moon, coming out around the time the Switch was coming out, everyone kind of expected it. That's kind of tangential, but, around the time the Switch was coming out, and it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, and for me personally, it's why it's my least favorite generation, even if I do really like the Pokemon in the generation. Some of my favorite Pokemon came from that generation, like Rowlet. Rowlet's one of my favorites, and I've been playing since the original Pokemon. But Rowlet's one of my favorites, and I really like a lot of the Pokemon in that generation. I really like the Ultra Beast. I think that's a really cool idea. The regional variants started in that generation. I think that's great. But from a gameplay perspective, it was really hand-holdy. It kind of pulled the games down for me, and I don't really want to replay them for that reason. I'll replay X and Y, just like I'll replay any other generation without any issue, but I can't bring myself to go back to Sun and Moon because it's just so slow, such a slog to get through. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon just don't do enough to fix that. I will give them credit, though, that Necrozma fight in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, that was really cool. But that's really it. It's a great generation, like all generations. Calling it the worst is like giving it an 8 out of 10, while all the other Pokemon games are like 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Like it's a meaningless category. They're all every generation is just so good, in my opinion. They're all basically the same quality. It's just the minor nitpicks that you might find, or that I might find, that you don't like. And for me, Gen 7 is just the slowest generation to play through, and that makes it my least favorite. So I agree with the sentiment, or with the statement, but I kind of feel like the sentiment is just not really there. Like, it just doesn't mean anything. Again, I did tweet about this. It's like calling Mario Sunshine the worst 3D Mario. Like, yeah, it is, but it doesn't really matter because it's still like an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 game. It's still leagues better than most 3D platformers. It's just that Mario games in general are so high quality that it kind of fails compared to them. But I mean, when your quality's all the way up here and one game is like down here a little bit, it just doesn't really matter. They're all great games, and I would never not recommend them. Or if someone said that Gen 7 was their favorite, I'd be like, okay, cool. I get it. I can see why it's your favorite, just not mine. Marco Maro tweeted, 2022 will be the last strong year for the Nintendo Switch, since 2023 will be the start of a new generation for Nintendo, with a console very similar to the actual Switch, but a little more powerful. I think it's supposed to be then the PS4 with 4K, new functions, and compatibility with the old Switch. I don't disagree. I feel like we're entering that time period where the second cycle for a lot of games is coming to a close. Not counting Zelda. We're gonna completely skip Zelda for right now. We'll talk about that later. A lot of these game companies are starting to wrap up development. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is coming out. Mario Strikers is coming out. They just look at the year lineup of games. A lot of things are coming out this year, and after this, or in the next couple of months, a lot of companies are going to be restarting development cycles. None of the game companies that are producing games that are coming out this year, or probably last year, are going to be producing games for the Switch. I can almost guarantee you that. That's just how development works. It takes, between 3 and 2 to 5 years or so to make a game. And in that time period, we're going to get a new Switch. We're 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're not going to be on the regular Switch. We're probably going to have a new one by then. At that point, the Switch will be 8 years old. That just makes sense. So realistically, this will probably be the last really strong year. That's not to say we won't get more games going forward, or that the Switch is done here. I'm going to be honest, I actually don't even think that the Switch 2 is going to come out next year. We'll touch on that in a second. But this will probably be the last really strong year where it's just every month is a big game. I think next year is going to be more like 2020 unintentionally probably, but or more intentionally, unlike 2020, which was unintentional. I feel like this is gonna be like intentional 2020, where there's maybe 5 or 6 big games that come out, but nothing crazy. It's gonna be a couple of big games, and by big I mean like AA and up, like WarioWare type games, like that not quality, but that level of game might be a game that holds up a couple of months. I don't see there being any major titles. Pokemon will obviously release every year like it always does. It'll get something next year. Even if it's like a spin-off or something, we'll get a Pokemon game. Same thing with Zelda. We'll get a Zelda next year, just like we do every year, no matter what it is, even if it's a Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, something like that. Hell, maybe we get that this year, we get Zelda next year. Who knows? But you get my idea. We'll probably start getting just, smaller releases starting next year, where there's not going to be big titles. I think Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be the last major title. Metroid Prime 4 maybe might be the last major title, like a final major title for like a holiday or something. But I don't think we're going to get the Switch 2 next year. I feel like that because the Switch titles this year are too big. There's too many big titles coming out this year. So it doesn't make sense to then launch a Switch in March, like the Switch 2 in March of next year. Not that they said March specifically, but it doesn't make sense to launch the Switch 2 early next year. I feel like at the earliest it would be holiday next year. But even then, I don't know. I feel like the next March. So in like 2 years from now. So not 2023, but 2024, early 2024 is when we'll get a Switch 2. That's my opinion. Most people say, well, that makes sense to release a console in the winter, not in the spring like they did with the Switch. Maybe they're probably not going to do that again. I actually think they are going to do that again. I think they're going to sell the Switch through the holiday, and like November, December, they're going to announce the Switch is coming in a few months, and then January we're going to get a full breakdown of what it is, and then March we'll get the Switch 2, and it'll come in with something. I don't really know what. I don't know what's going to come out that year, but I think it's going to be 2024, maybe 2025. The Mario Kart DLC is what kind of throws me off, because I think that goes until 2023, like the end of 2023 or something. So that kind of throws me off a little bit, because I feel like they're going to give it like a year after that DLC ends, before Mario Kart comes out. So maybe we get the Switch in like March, right after the Mario Kart DLC ends, and then like that holiday is when Mario Kart 9 comes out. That makes sense to me, at least, something like that. But yeah, I think this tweet makes perfect sense. Even if I disagree with the fine details, I think the concept of this is probably the last big year for the Switch makes perfect sense. Yeah, and this is just a sentiment I've seen online as of late. We'll show a tweet here. I'm not really trying to specifically talk about this person, though. And that's just WB might as well just cancel every DCEU project and focus on the Batman cinematic universe. Here's the thing. I love Batman. I really do. But I'm kind of tired of Batman. We get enough Batman. I don't need more Batman. You know who I want to see? Give me a Booster Gold movie. Give me a good Green Lantern movie. The Flash movie. I know we're getting a Black Adam movie. That's cool. Shazam 2 will be cool. A Blue Beetle movie would be great. Static Shock. Give me a goddamn Static Shock movie. There's so many great DC characters. There's so many just absolutely great DC characters. We got Black Canary back there. Give me a good Birds of Prey movie. I kind of like the Birds of Prey movie with Harley Quinn, but that was less Birds of Prey and more Harley Quinn with the Birds of Prey. And I didn't really care that much for that. Like as a Birds of Prey movie, it was a fine movie, but not what I want to see from Birds of Prey. Give me a real Birds of Prey movie, a Zatanna movie, something. Honestly, just anything besides more Batman. I'm kind of just tired of Batman. Batman is not DC's only hero. Marvel's doing other things. So when they keep trying to fix Spider-Man, and I think they've done great with Tom Holland, by the way, when they keep trying to fix Spider-Man, we're still getting an Iron Man movie. Iron Man is a nobody. Before 2008, no one gave a fuck about Iron Man. No one knew who Iron Man was. He wasn't even in the DC crossover. He was that unimportant. But they gave us a movie, and he's become huge. Let us get something besides the main big characters. But you know why we have the Marvel Universe that we have? Because Marvel sold off all the rights for films for their big characters. They didn't have rights to Spider-Man, the X-Men. I think they sold off like Namor and stuff too. The Daredevil. Like they just didn't have access to these bigger these bigger characters. So they had to use the scraps. I think the biggest character they had was Captain America and Hulk. Like, sure, most people know who Captain America is. Everyone knows who Hulk is from the TV show, and we just had the Ang Lee Hulk not that long beforehand. So like those were the big characters at the time that Marvel was working with. No one gave a fuck about Iron Man. No one knew who Thor was, but they made these great movies. All right, bear with me. They made good movies with these characters. I think the Iron Man 1 is a great movie. I think that is an absolute classic movie for superhero genre. Thor is not that great. It's fine, I guess. But the point is, they made these characters become household names with these big movies that showed who they could be in the right context. And they didn't just, oh, we can't do it. We don't have our Spider-Man. We can't make a cinematic universe. We don't have the X-Men. They just use their B characters. Stop giving us Batman all the time. Stop giving us new Superman all the time. DC has wonderful characters that they could do so much with if they just stopped focusing on the biggest characters they have. Introduce some of these smaller characters, and the best part of those smaller characters is that no one knows who they are. So if you change things, no one cares. As long as you get the general idea right, that core element right, it doesn't matter. Because no one knows who the fuck Booster Gold is. But if you make a good Booster Gold movie, people will care who he is. That's all. That's it. You don't have to... It doesn't have to be Batman all the time. I love Batman, I really do, but it does not have to be Batman all the goddamn time. Give me something else. Literally anything else. Like... Give me a goddamn Static Shock movie. Nintendo decided to delay Advanced Wars 1 and 2 reboot camp today to an unspecified date due to the global issues with Russia and Ukraine. I mean, it makes sense. It is what it is. People for some reason are mad. I don't see why. Like it would have been a PR nightmare releasing that kind of game right now. It just makes sense not to. Personally, I don't care either way. If they had released it, cool. I obviously would have played it. I can't wait for the game. But if they want to delay it, like that's fine too. Kind of indifferent. But I mean, it is news. They delayed the game. Obviously, there's more important things in the world than Advanced Wars 1 and 2. Michael Patcher on Reset Era said that PlayStation is doomed and they will cease to exist in about 10 years. I think Michael Patcher is doomed and he's going to cease to exist in about 10 years. That's wrong. Shouldn't say that. But no, I don't think that's true, like, at all, really. What about PlayStation? PlayStation 5 is selling, I mean, it's selling out constantly. It's selling incredibly well for the, considering like the supply restraints. Is it doing as well as the Switch? No, but it hasn't been out that long. It's only been a couple years, and it's only been out with supply constraints. So I think that's a whole other issue. I enjoy the PS5. I don't know. And with the first party IP it has, it'll be fine. Now Sony as a company, like production studios and everything, from what I understand, that has that as a business they have some problems. But I think they have like $20 billion in just like as cash on hand. So I think they're fine. I don't see them having any major issues. I mean, Spider-Man, they have the Spider-Man movie IP rights, so like that's gonna be that'll keep them afloat for a while. If they can just keep making good Spider-Man movies, they'll be fine for a significant period of time. And the PlayStation brand IP just has tons of games that they're fine. I honestly think this is just ridiculous. I I think Xbox is going to give them a run for their money this generation. I think overall Xbox will be doing fine. But honestly, I see the PS5 still being around in 10 years. I don't see PlayStation going away in 10 years. That's crazy talk. Also, this guy's said multiple other things that are nonsense, like Nintendo's doomed, and there was another one I saw that was pretty stupid. Don't listen to this guy, he's a fucking idiot. Flash movie was delayed again, this time to June of next year. This movie's never coming out. I don't... Just kill the movie.